lot of people are put off by winter fishing due to the long nights and the adverse weather. It can be cold, mild, wet, windy. We get it all here in the UK. I split winter into two things really: a scratching phase of winter and let's have a go stage of winter. And what I mean by this is you need to be looking at things like catch reports, social media research, find out how the lake's fishing, and also in conjunction with that, the weather forecast. If you're in a really cold spell, or it's been really cold, or it's dropping really cold, the pressure is through the roof, and when I say through the roof, I mean over 120 millibar of pressure. That's really high and not making the most carpy conditions. So I'd class that as scratching. If I was scratching for a bite, I just wouldn't put any bait in at all. So in poor conditions, I aim to fish zigs because the fish often find the warmest area in the water column, and by chopping and changing with colours and especially length of zig, you can often find where they're held. But I do also fish on the bottom. Solid bags I think are a great edge all year round, using little bright higher hook baits in the solid bags and putting them into the areas where you think the fish are holding due to your research, or if you have seen signs such as bubbling or shoals. And also a lot of the time I like to fish either singles or little sticks, and the rig I would use for this is a Ronnie rig. The only difference to a lot of people with my Ronnie rig is I use a 12-inch boom made out of a soft coated braid. Because I'm a leg clip angler, I don't use helicopters, and that ensures I'm presented pretty as long as I get a drop. And often I will tip my hook bait with maggots with a bright pop-up. I find that scores really well, but often I do like to just attach a little stick for a little bit of extra attraction to try and get them fish in the mood for feeding. But when I'm using a stick, I want something really attractive, but hardly any food. Just enough for that one bite, just enough to encourage that fish to tip its head down and think, yeah, I'm going to have a go at that. And if you've got that little parcel of attraction right, and a nice high-vis, high-attract pop-up, tip with a couple of naturals. My favourite is maggots, but a lot of the good anglers in the country do use worms. It's not something I've really used because I've got so much faith in maggots. So I'm going to show you my basic stick mix, what I'd attach to a high-vis pop-up on a Ronnie for the winter when I'm scratching. So the first thing to do for me is boilie crumb. This is bug boilie crumb. I've done this at home about a week before I want to use it if possible. So once I've blitzed it down, I generously add the matching amino smoke. It really compacts this stuff down, and I try and keep it in these sealed bags so it keeps it nice and fresh, and just add a little bit more as it dries out. And I'm aiming for a consistency where it does bind together, but it easily breaks down as well. So that would be the core, really, of my stick mix. So I'll make a stick mix here. I'll do this little and often because I don't want it sat in a bucket. So a couple of handfuls of the smoke infused crumb goes into the bucket, and then keeping with like the bug theme, then get a small handful of insect meal, drop that into the bucket and give that a little mix around. And then also I'm going to add some really small pellets. These are the crayfish pellets, but again these have been pre-prepared at home. I have added some of the crayfish glug little and often, rubbed it into the pellet so it really absorbs it in, and again it gets to a sticky feel, it binds together but easily breaks down. So again, a couple of handfuls in there. Give that a mix around, and then you've got quite a dry mix, what doesn't stay together. This will work, but I like it to be a bit more binded. So again, what I am going to do is add some bug amino smoke into the bucket, like so. Give that a whiz round, and now I'm getting almost so it's near enough boiling up, like so. And then the next thing to do is add some naturals. If you don't have a hook bait tipped with naturals, or you just want it as a bit of extra attraction, get them in the mix. They could be a real game changer at this time of year. Even when the nuisance fish are quite prevalent in the water you're fishing, I still think by attracting them fish in when it's really cold, it just adds to the attraction. It's movement for the carp to home in and on, and it also gets all the acids and attractions out of the bait going through the water column, so it acts like a homing beacon for them carp. So I start with some dead maggots. These are from Willie's Worms. I do like these, it's very convenient. These are dead reds, and these are straight out of my cool bag, so they're nice and fresh. Smell okay. If they smell ammoniary, I just wouldn't use them because they can act more of a repellent than an attraction. So for this, I've probably got enough in this bucket for 7 sticks, something like that. So just a little pinch, 2 pinches of dead reds. And into this, these are something I've recently started using, casters, but I really do think they have a massive attraction value of when fish do start to eat them, the crunch value of these. I'm convinced the carp can hear it from a long way across the lake. So I add a small sprinkling of them into the bucket. And then the last thing to do is I like to put a pinch of live reds in there as well for a movement attractor. These, I opened these earlier, I've riddled them off, and I've added some of the krill meal to them, just to add a little bit of flavour, but most importantly, keep them fresh so they're not sweating. Remember, even when you're fishing, try and keep your maggots and casters at a temperature cool enough so they don't sweat and they're not too active. So I'm going to put a couple of little handfuls in there like that. Again, just give it a little bit of a mix around. And then it's not quite binding enough for my liking. So what I do, and it boosts the attraction, because think about it, the water temperature is at the lowest it's going to be throughout the year. So the more soluble attraction you can get into these small parcels of attraction is definitely going to get you them extra bites when things are really hard. So this is the bug glug. This is a very sticky, thick liquid. Give that a good squirt. This will bind it all together really nicely. And it binds up near enough into a ball, but with a touch it breaks down. So when that's on the lake bed, once your bag has melted, your little mesh bag, it is going to stay like that, but it is going to slowly break down, especially with the movement of the maggots. And this causes air bubbles to come out of your mix, dragging food signals to the top, again acting as a homing beacon. That is my stick mix for when I'm scratching. And now I take some mesh, funnel web, and then just take a little, give it a good mix round your mix. Half a handful in like so. And then I'm not going to use a plunger or anything like that, because I don't want it really tight, because the water temperature will be low and I don't want it to take ages to break down. And I'm just going to manipulate this into a firmish ball and then secure that in place with a simple overhand knot. I normally leave this about 2 inches away, and this will come apparent why in a second. Cut that away, drop my mesh there, and that gives you your bag. So now, how do you attach it? A lot of people like to thread these on. Gives me anxiety about getting something on that hook point. So with this tail here, I just hook through the tail of the bag, and then with this excess, I wrap that around the bait, like so. So that makes sure nothing can wrap round, then maggots can't get to the hook point and render the rig useless. Then I will just cut the excess PVA off. Makes no real difference apart from slightly better to cast and just looks a little bit prettier. And that would be my cast at the area where the fish are, showing fish, or just out in a general zone you know the fish like to hold in winter. So one last thing, boost the attraction that little bit more. This stuff has been absolutely next level for me all year. The S7 amino smoke, wherever I use it, in my spod mixes, on my sticks, on my hook baits, it's just deadly. So give it a nice, good glug in. Looks like I'm putting a lot on, but I'm literally using about a 20th of a bottle. Just put that on, give it a little massage in. Get that clipped onto my quick change swivel, onto my lead clip with a nice big lead, and get that out into the zone, and I'm sure that'll do your bites. That's my approach to scratching. Single hook baits tipped with maggots, little sticks, solid bags and zigs. So in the winter you do get mild periods, you do get where I call it carpy. What I mean by this is temperatures above 6 degrees. If you get double figures, fantastic. Southerly winds, southwesterly winds, and that all important atmospheric pressure under the magical 1000 millibar pressure mark. So when that's on, I'll still use maggots, casters, sticks, the bright hook baits. All winter I use bright hook baits no matter what I'm doing, and solid bags, but I would like to fish 2 on a spot over a little bit of bait, because you can still get a feeding response in the depths of winter when them conditions are spot on for it. So don't be afraid to bait. But when I'm saying baiting, I'm not saying start with 30 spoms. I'm saying start with 3 to 5, depending on how accurate you are. If you land them all on the money, 3 will be enough. If you're a little bit looser because of the wind or adverse weather, or you're just having a bad day, I'd go to 5 to make sure I've got a lot of attraction in the area where my hook baits are positioned, whether that be single pop-ups, little sticks or solid bags. So how do you make a really good winter spod mix? Well, again, I keep it similar to the little mix I've just made for the sticks, but add a couple more full items. So I'm going to crack on and show you what I do. So start with, we've got the smoke infused bug crumb. I'm going to make enough for about 8 spoms, so I've got my initial 3 to 5, and then I can top it up if I see roach in the area, if I see any signs of carp, or if I get a bite, I've got a couple to go straight back out there. But I don't want this spod mix sat here for too long, especially not once I've added naturals. So now I have got the crumb in there, and now the crayfish infused pellets, a little sprinkle in there as well. These things are very smelly, really small, and they're going to keep the fish grubbing around. And then also I'm going to take some of the matching bug pellets, 2 little handfuls in there. These are 4mm, so they are a little bit bigger, take a little bit longer to break down, offering optimal levels of attraction for a longer period of time. So once that's in there, then I am going to add some boilies. These things are mega. These are 8mm bug boilies. They're tiny, and they really lead into this sort of fishing because they're just the next size up, and you sort of get into the size of your hook bait there or thereabouts. These have been pre-soaked in bug liquid food. Done this 3 or 4 times over a 2-week period to get these, and now they're a little bit sticky but smell beautiful. But I'm not going to go mad with these. A handful and another handful. Put them into the bucket. I know I use a lot of liquids, but I'm only using little bits of each, so these liquids will last me for 4 or 5 sessions depending on how many fish I'm catching. So a little generous amount of bug smoke. The bug liquid food, this is really potent and strong. So a cap full of this, you don't need a lot. It is expensive, but it really can make the difference because it boosts off loads and loads of feeding signals. So that's where we're at so far. So now I would leave that with a lid on the bucket. Leave that, if you can, for about an hour. Let that all soak in the goodness, all blend together, again, to extend that length of attraction. The next thing I add is the golden grain. All fish love it. It's really sweet, really easy to digest, and really visual. And then I'm going to add 1 good handful of casters, 1 good handful of dead reds. We don't want to overdo it with the naturals. That's why I'm only doing a handful of each. We want to use them as a feeding stimulant, but we don't want them to be preoccupied on the naturals, because then they, in turn, I find them really difficult to catch, and they aren't the best for the fish used in large quantities. Using in moderation is more than fine, but I do like to mix them like this, so I'm not spodding just pure amounts of maggots and casters. And then give that a mix around, and then literally just as I'm about to spod out, I do this in two ways. You can either put a couple of handfuls of maggots into the bucket, live maggots, or just put a little sprinkling in each spom as you go. But for that mix, 1, 2, give it a mix up. So in that relatively simple mix, you've got loads of soluble liquid attraction. You've got pellets, crumb, small micro 8 millers. You've got dead reds, casters and live maggots, plus the golden grain. What carp could resist that at this time of year? As I say, I'd apply this to my spot I've found as tightly as possible, 3 to 5 spawns, top it up as and when you need to. And what I mean by that is, if you see activity, if you catch one, if there's a lot of nuisance fish there which you think might be eating it, 1 or 2 spawns on top can often provoke a feeding response and get you that bite. Okay, so one last thing to say before I end this video is, I bang on about it all the time: location, location, location. When you get here, talk to people, have a good look round, do your research beforehand, do everything you can to put yourself in the best position. Simply, no matter what you use, the best rigs in the world, the best bait, if you're not on them, you simply can't catch them. So put that effort in, and if you do see signs of fish throughout the session, you've only committed 3 or 4 spawns, you can move off that and get in amongst the action. And one last thing, if you would like to see how I use zigs or solid bags, have a look at these videos on the suggested list, and that will show you how I fish them also. Big thank you for watching. I hope you all have a fantastic winter campaign wherever you're fishing, and if you do manage to catch a snow carp, please send me a picture.